Hi everyone. Hi everyone. If you'll find a spot to sit and calm down a bit, that'd be great. Thank you very much. So hi, I'm Philip from Applifting, and I'm very happy there's so many of you today. And so welcome to the our crew talk, which is today about backend technologies and especially about the new trends in 2024. So I hope you've been looking forward to this evening as much as I did, because the three speakers we have today are my very, very good friends. So I'm glad that we can learn from them, because I have them in a very high respect. And the first developer of today, who's not actually just developer, but also an architect and a great business person, is Lukáš, who will be talking about how to make your development loop as fast as possible. And from what I've seen so far, he'll talk not just about test-driven development, which you already might be familiar with, but also about closure, which you might be unfamiliar with. At least I am. So, Lukáš, come to stage. And after Lukáš sets up everything, enjoy the talk. Also, if you'll be interested in asking questions, you can find the event on Slido. There was the QR code, but you can still find it through the search.
No problem. Better? Okay, can I start? Okay, good evening. I hope that you would enjoy my presentation. So, let's start about the feedback loop. Who knows what is it? Yeah, okay, I can read too. Good boy. Not really. What is it? It's a punch card, right? Yeah. So this is your file when you write the code, and you can run it on computer, right? And do you know how much time it takes to get a feedback for your code, so you know it works or not? A week? Okay. 1 day? Yeah, it's possible. It's something between hours or units of days. And the thing is that first thing you need to write down your code, right? You need to wait that the machine processes the code, but before that you need to wait that the machine is available for you, because at the time the machine was so pricey, so there were one machine for many scientists at this time. I worked on one Python project, like the code base after 4 years, based on Django, like 4,000 lines of code. And Python is interpreted language. It's not compiled on, right? So there's no compilation. So you just change the code, you save it, you go to the browser, and it runs, right? That's how it works. Yes, but between the server needs to be restarted, and even on interpreted language, it takes 20 or 30 seconds. So it takes 30 seconds, so you can realize that you have null pointer exception or something like this. It's silly, right? So who used that workflow? You change the code, you save it. Probably you compile it. It depends on the type of language you use it. And you're waiting for the completion of course. You go to the browser and you fire the button, or go to the Postman or something similar tool for testing your API. You fire the button, you send your request, and you find out, okay, there's an undefined, it's not a function, null pointer, or some silly mistake. You may say, okay, but I use, for example, Kotlin, so there is null pointer exception, right? Because it's like compile safe. Okay. So let's say that you write down some logic, okay, and you save it. So there's no error, but the result is still empty, right? You filter some array. Who used that approach? Okay, not so many hands. What's the alternative to this? Yeah, it's a test-driven development. It's pretty fresh and new technique. It's just only more than 20 years old, right? Now, anyway, it's a workflow technique. And the whole point is that you write a test for the code you are going to implement, and you run just the test for the code you are going to implement. So you're not testing the whole system. And the benefit for this is also for compiled languages like Java or C# or something like this, that not the whole projects need to be recompiled. Not for not for all cases, obviously, but nowadays I mean like 10 years ago, all these languages got something like partial compilation. So if you change just like the class or the method in the class, just like this part is recompiled. So the feedback loop is much faster. And the reason is you don't need to restart all the system. Because when you restart all the system, there is probably some database connection. They need to be like stopped and re-evaluated again. So your connection pool need to be started again, prepare all the connection to the Kafka or Rabbit or something like this, right? And we can skip this step. Just running tests for code that need to be written. So as I said, it's more like a workflow process. So you write a test for something that need to be implemented. You run the test, and this test is supposed to fail. Okay, why I'm running tests that should fail for something which is not implemented? Any idea? Nope? Okay, the reason why I do this silly step is that I want to be sure that I'm running tests for something which is not really implemented. It sounds silly, but like when you're altering the business logic for not simple code base, you can write down the test for something which is already covered in production code. So this step is just for you to clarify, okay, this is not implemented yet. You write the most simplest implementation for the test. Save it and run the test. Test is green right now. Okay, now is the time to refactoring my code. So I can go for some fancy map reduce or whatever, or using some coroutines or whatever. Doesn't matter. The reason why I'm refactoring code after my silly implementation is that I want to be sure that now it works, and I want to tune it up, right? So you are doing small baby steps and go forward. And this path, this simple path, leads to the better code rather than like from top of your head writing the best implementation of business logic you need to write down. And we are at the end, so we go to the first step and continue. This is like really simple. There are really simple requirements for the business logic. For example, you got a complaint from your customer for some report, right? In a report, there are transactions, and customer is paying for all these transactions, right? And the customer complains, okay, I'm not going to pay for these 3 transactions because there was like, error on the API. I'm not going to pay because you returned me error, right? Makes sense? Okay, makes sense. So these are requirements. When the customer is on free tier, okay, no complaints are possible, right? So this is Java code. I would say it will be pretty readable, but anyway, there's a report fulfiller. There are a few dependencies. This is the constructor, and At the bottom, this is my simple implementation. Why I'm raising exception, right? Makes no sense at this point. Nope. I want to run the test, so it fails. The test is pretty simple. I just prepare all the necessary data before that and set the expectation. Running the test, okay, test failed. Failed on what I expected. It's not implemented yet, right? Okay, and now is the step to implement it in the most silly way I can do it. This is pretty simple, right? One could say, okay, this is like not so good code, but it works. Yeah, I got a green mark. Now I can refactor it if I want. Probably nothing to do right now, could be better in future. Yeah. Second step. I pick the most simplest only requirement is that if there would be one complaint, I want to fulfill that complaint. Okay, I prepared all expected data, expected input and expected output. And again, run it. Okay, I still got the green light. Yeah, because like the data doesn't match. And don't afraid, I'm not going to implement all the requirements. I just want to show you the process, how I work. I'm doing small steps forward to fulfill the expectations. And like, yes, you can see like 2 nested loops. It's not easy maintainable code, right? But I don't care right now. I don't care at this moment. I would care after I got the green light. I would go and refactor it. Or maybe I would go and refactor it like after the few 5 or 10 iterations, because there are more requirements at the very beginning, right? So maybe I would refactor it at the end when I fulfill all the requirements. But the point is that you can get a feedback in 2 seconds. And imagine implementing this by like saving the code, going to the browser, firing the button, and see, okay, it doesn't work. And like, so I can keep my hands on a keyboard and just like hitting my command R or something like this and get the result in my IntelliJ. And that's it. It's a simple practice, right? Yeah, and if I follow this process, I can end up with more maintainable or more readable code instead of like writing the code just from top of my head and like doing ping pong between browser and my IDE. Yeah. There are other benefits from the test-driven development. It's incremental work. So even if you are working on something what is like, you know, really complicated, something you estimate for 3 or 5 days, every day you did something, you did some job, and you can show someone or your product owner or whatever, or your project manager, what you did. That's the first thing. So you see what you did every day. It works pretty well with pair programming. So you can handle a task to someone else and go to do something else if you need it. The third thing is that you cover all the business logic with the test, because you obviously start with the test, so you covered everything. And like naturally, it leads to much more testable modular architecture. You probably heard some myths about the TDD. It typically is that you can make a mistake, right, in tests, so your test would be wrong, so you can get a green light. Yeah, that's possible, but like this like assumption doesn't make like testing useless, right? Or this process. Next thing is that every piece of the code needs to be covered and implemented by TDD. That's totally wrong. I suggest to use it especially for business logic, because your business logic contains just like pure classes or functions, depending on the language you use, data structures, and that's all. You are not like you don't need to mocking anything or whatever. You don't need to like take your Spring or Hibernate to run your unit test. If you do this, you are probably doing something wrong. Tests are slow. Yeah, they are. If you need to run all the Spring or your .NET application in memory to just like get your user that is actually logged in, right? It slows development process. I would say no, simply because if you say that I didn't write in tests, I just write the implementation and I'm done, how do you know that your code actually works? Because you test it in a browser, you see that it works, okay. After 1 month, you make other changes in a code base. How do you know that all previous use cases works, right? I don't know. And my favorite one is that you cannot write a test before you don't know how it will be implemented. That's not true, because you know what is expected output from your test, right? For your task. Okay, and this is the expected output for your test. And you start typically with the most simple case. That's what I would suggest. If I would be implementing, for example, quicksort, I would start with really simple, maybe stupid assumption, like the empty array is already sorted. So I would write a test for where input would be empty array and output would be empty array too. Next step would be probably array with 1 element, and so on and so on. And that's the process. And if you apply this simple process to your complicated tasks, you end up with the same result, doing small steps and going forward. Of course, as I said, it's not suitable for every situation in your life, especially for the end-to-end testing. It's not like suitable, and I would not use that because end-to-end testing is like heavy for spinning all the system dependencies, other services, and putting your fixtures into database or whatever. So the iteration process would be so slow. Same for the user interface, because it's hard to obviously it's hard to test that like the bottom has like the correct border and so on. Doesn't make sense to test it in unit test. Also for exploitative programming, when you need to check if it's something possible, so you're just playing with the code, I would regulate it. And the wait time scripts make no sense, right? You just like probably transfer some data and throw it away. So, but that's not the whole point and the reality. Do you know how the sculptor works? No? I would say like he just like, get a huge cube of the stone and make this thing, right? This is the second day. First day you got a cube, a second day this is the result. Right? Or no? I don't know. I'm just an engineer, so I don't know how it works. Nope. He starts with like cutting the stone into some like expected like some he omits fine grained details, and you can see it because like this is the like next step from the stone, how to make the changes, right? But you don't see all the details. I don't see the hair, but I know that hair would be probably somewhere here and here, but I'm not sure. I don't know like if like this hair would be like this way or not. I'm not sure, and that's the whole point. You are doing small incremental steps to hit your goal, and the goal is on the right side. Yeah. And do you see like the process is really similar? It's an iterative process. You got a feedback for each step you do, and the feedback is intermediate. You see the result when you hit a stone. So I'm asking, could you do it better in software engineering, like the sculptor? Probably yes, right. That's why I'm here. Yeah. And it's time for demo. So let me open my my code. Please don't be afraid. Yeah, it's a closure. Yeah. Don't be afraid of the parents. Parents like you, so it's fine. But I think if you can read CLI code, it will be readable for you. I will explain what I'm doing. But so you don't need to go through it. On the top, I get like increment 0. So that's one one piece of code. So yeah, okay, it works. Nice. Well, this is my editor. It's something like IntelliJ. It's a SpaceMax, old-fashioned editor with all the features you get in VS Code nowadays or IntelliJ. Anyway, this is my closure code running on JVM. You can see in the terminal. All right, where is the terminal? Yeah, it's here. So I'm running OpenJDK 11 version. So I run the JDK here. And here is my code. And what I do, I connect my editor to the JVM. Why I would do that? Because I want to test my code in incremental way. And not even testing my code. I want to like explore what is possible, for example, and what is not. What I did right now, I sent this piece of code to the JVM, and JVM sends back the result. I hope it's readable. I just like generated range from 0 to 10 exclusively, and applied incremental function to every item. So obviously, I just incremented array, right? Okay, that's very simple. You probably can do it with your JavaScript console too, right? Or you can do it with, I guess, like with Kotlin right now in IntelliJ. It's being called Kotlin snippet or stuff like this. Okay, let's do something a little bit complicated. Okay, I just like did a summary function, but still it's just an expression, right? This is not the business logic or something. Okay, something real. Here is some piece of data stored in JSON, right? And our goal would be to work with data. So the piece of code is like, okay, 2,000 lines of code. Ah, sorry, wrong command. Okay. And we would like to filter all the active users. And like, you know, there's some other criteria we need to apply. But I'm not sure how to do it. Like, one way is how to do it would be like opening the JSON file, writing the implementation, and as I did before that, right? Write the test before. But that's one way how to do it. But sometimes you would like to play with the code, for example, with the API or with SDK, to find out if it's something possible to do it with the API. So I'm loading the file into memory. This is here, like just parsing the file. So from the string I got an object, and there is some like little bit composed filter. We don't need to go to the detail because I don't want to teach you closure today. Maybe next time. But this is the output we got, right? So we filtered expected users, but that's not what we want, right? So what I can do in iterative manner, classic demo, right? Yes, now should be fine. What I can do, yeah. I can, okay, that's not good for reading, right? Let me, nope. Yeah? Okay, this is better. So I just like filtered users with active mail on the mail domain, and like take their first name, last name, and connect it with the space, and put them onto array, and that's it. But the whole point is that I can use this approach to writing my business logic or whatever. Next example. For example, I got here, yeah. Like on this line, I got the connection to the database, and I write down get now function. I'm running on Postgres, so this timestamp is from the database. I'm just calling now database function. And like, for example, you got a table and you want to filter data and to see, okay, if your expected data are there or something like this. So we can iteratively go forward. So we can unpack the timestamp from the map we got. What we can do next is to convert SQL time to my local dates time, and we can, for example, let's say, add few years. And yeah. And if you notice, I didn't restart anything. I just like hit my keyboard, and the editor sent this expression to the JVM and evaluated and got it back. And I'm still using my Postgres. So if I would connect to the Postgres from other terminal, insert some data here, the data would appear here. And you can say, okay, but this is just a closure. It's some weird Asian language, right? I'm doing my job in Java or .NET or something. But the whole point is that it's running on a JVM, so JVM is capable to do it. So this is like not a closure-specific thing. I can run same thing on Node.js in same way. So also V8 is capable to do it. I'm pretty sure that you can do this with .NET Core, but I don't have a demo for it. Last demo, because like let's do something much more funny. Game development. Okay, how games are being developed? Yeah, so typically you write your code, you save it, and you want to see if it works, right? And it's like a really painful process because you don't write a test for that your jump function has this specific velocity or something like this, but you can do this also. You can apply it also the iterative process. So if I open the correct file, and let's say that I, for example, limit this max jump variable. Yeah, as you can see, oh, sorry, yeah. And I didn't restart it anything. I'm still running same JVM. But using this kind of approach, I can iteratively go forward and get immediate feedback from my code. Yeah. As I said, like this kind of approach is being called REPL-driven development. It's not something new. It's being like it's a, I would say, general approach when you are working with functional languages, especially Clojure or ClojureScript. It's like same manner, or in F# or Elm. So you connect your editor, and you are sending the expressions or lines of code immediately and getting feedback in your editor. So that's how you can work and going forward. And I would say this this is a future because you can do similar thing with Kotlin, for example, using code snippets. It works for some simple expressions. You can put some modules on your class path, but still, it's not something like that you can directly use your code base. I mean, the whole project, having connection to the database, and like testing your queries or working with the database directly. It's not that far, but I would say it's the limitation of the language, and mostly because these languages are being like stateful by default, not stateless, like a Clojure or other functional languages. So that's all from me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for the lovely presentation. We might have a few questions here, right?
Okay, let's go for it.
I did a great deal of test-driven development before, but I never did sculpturing, so you've shown us how it's similar, but
Yeah.
do you know what the biggest difference is between test-driven development and making sculptures?
No, let's go.
Sculptors don't have the undo button, right?
You're correct.
That's scary.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, we have one question on the stream, which is, have you ever been on a project where test-driven development has been successfully sustained over time?
Yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Could you elaborate?
Elaborate more. Okay. I would not say like it was like fintech. It was a Swedish project based on Clojure, and like first thing is that we used like TDD on like daily daily work process. Another thing is that like especially in Clojure, people like combine all these two approaches to get the result done, and yeah, and like there's the thing. When we worked in the teams, we paired almost every day, and code has been deployed, on like I would say real implementation of continuous delivery. So we deploy to the production every day, few times, 5 times or 10 times. But I have like special successful story for the TDD was on same project, and the product owner came to us and said, "Hey guys, I need you to change some like features on the old service, and the old service has been written in Rails." And I said, "Okay, I am probably capable to learn Ruby in 1 day or something, but Rails is just magic. Like there are no rules or something." And she said, "Yeah, but like, however, we have nobody else than your team who can handle that. So we pair programmed for 1 quarter and get a job done." And that was only safe way how to make our job done, because how can I just change a code and know that I didn't break anything, right? And going forward.
Yeah. Good point. Thanks. So I don't have any more questions in the Slido, but perhaps someone from the audience has a question. Anyone? Go ahead.
Thank you. On this large-scale project, haven't you had like the experience that you had these like dummy tests, as you mentioned, for example, empty array, that they would just pollute like your test environment, that you would have so many of these trivial tests that you eventually maybe need to go through and maybe delete them?
Yeah, and I also did them like at not very beginning of the career, but I mean at the very beginning when I applied TDD or learned something. And I think if you see that after some time, it means that you are improving and getting better skills. So it's a natural, it happens. And yeah, and I also had a big experience on a project where CTO said like, we don't do unit tests because this is waste of time. So we did just integration tests directly with the database. And you can imagine the developer experience and the velocity of the team on that project.
Got it, thanks.
More questions? Anyone?
You compared TDD to testing your code through, let's say, HTTP request. Is it a fair comparison? Because it more compares to integration testing, right?
Yeah.
So is there a technique you know of that is fast as TDD but is comparable to integration testing, covers the same area as the HTTP request?
Okay, I'm not sure where you are like pointing right now.
When I'm
Yeah.
running the HTTP request,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have coverage of many areas of the code. When I run the test,
yeah. Okay,
I
like
test the single function. That's not comparable.
that's not comparable. And the whole point that if you do this, you end up with probably leaking abstraction from the your business logic to the end integration or end-to-end tests. For example, I saw it many times on the code base that developers are firing like spinning the spring, wall spring, and firing the HTTP request and checking if your expected changes are being done also in the database and mocking, for example, some email service and checking if the past data are being these specific data. But like if you do this, you are leaking abstraction because like this should be encapsulated by your API, right? So with every little changes, you need to change all the integration tests. If this is something that you wanted to ask, but I'm not sure.
Yes, basically. Yeah, I would say the answer is focus on the, when I want to focus on the little piece of code,
Yeah.
there is no point of running integration test or running HTTP request.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks. Any more questions? Anyone? In that case, Lukáš, thank you very much for answering the questions.
Thank you for the attention.
And let's take a 5-minute break or maybe 10-minute break, and then we'll have second presentation, which will be a bit different because Lukáš was talking about how to make test-driven development, but that's for people who actually like to do the work. And I believe the next speaker will introduce a solution for lazy people, which I loved, by the way. Excuse me, everyone, everyone. It's time to sit down and it's time to start the next presentation. Everyone, would you mind calming a bit down, perhaps finding a place to sit? Lovely. Lovely. Thank you. So, as I promised, we have next speaker here. And the next speaker is Petr Vneng, also from Applifting. He's the backend tech lead for Node.js. And as I promised, the next presentation will be for lazy people like me. Who of you is using Visual Studio Code? Plenty of people, nice. I also did use Visual Studio Code recently, until I've seen Peter's presentation, and then I don't use it anymore. So I think I never used Vim. Vim, yeah, I never used Vi. Yeah, so, Peter, take it away.
Go. Už můžu mluvit? Okay. So, as Philip said, he was right. It's definitely for lazy people, not for people who use Vim. Okay. And I'm going to talk about Cursor IDE. At first I want to ask which one of you have heard of this? Okay, 3 people, great. That's perfect. So, I will just go through what it is. It's a relatively new product, and they just recently raised $8 million of funding from OpenAI themselves to build an AI-powered IDE. And the interesting thing about it, what it is it's actually just a fork of VS Code, but it's made to be AI first. And what this means is that basically everything that you're used to from VS Code is in there. It's basically VS Code, just with AI very more tightly integrated into it. And for that to understand what that means, we can go through the list of features. I mean, I basically just listed some of the main features or selling points it has. It has integrated chat a la ChatGPT. It has inline AI edits with follow-ups. It can auto-debug issues for you with displaying some chain of thinking. It also enables you to include documentation, etc., into AI prompts. It has something called interpreter mode, which is in beta, which we will go through later. It has a feature of creating an AI project from scratch, and it can also generate code reviews for you, which is like a lot. And I thought it will be much easier if we go through a live demo, and I will show you how it actually works. But like, I was pretty scared to actually make it a live demo, so it's just recorded. So yeah. Okay, wait. Sorry. Right. Hope it's gonna work. Yeah, good, okay. So now here, we have some very basic password service in the Nest.js project, which only hashes passwords and then verifies them using Argon2 algorithm on the background, which is not very interesting. It's like a very basic stuff. But what we would like to do, since we didn't use test-driven development to make this, we would like to generate unit tests for us. So, oh shit, sorry. Okay, again. As you can see, it looks basically the same as VS Code, except here we have like a side chat, which, oh, by the way, I just also want to ask, like, does anyone of you use GitHub Copilot? Yeah, way more people, so you'll probably be familiar with something like this because it also has chat, but We will explain some differences between that. I will just say that I want to write tests for the password service. And what it does is, it of course generates some basic unit tests for this. Okay, this is pretty basic stuff that ChatGPT can do for you as well. So we will just basically create a new file and copy-paste this code into it. And we will try running it, if it works. Now the nice thing here is that it's actually code-base aware, so all the imports it generates are actually correct. It knows where the service is. Okay, I was just some mistake on my part. I was in the wrong directory. But that's actually important for later, okay? Okay, and it passes. So now this, as I said, was like pretty basic stuff, but now say we don't want to write tests like this, but we want to do something that's called property-based testing, which I didn't really want to go into it because it would make for like a completely different presentation as well. But let's say that instead of testing a certain test case in unit tests, you actually test for like general property of the code you're writing. So instead of, if we had like a basic sum function that only like puts two integers together, like a and b, and it returns the sum of it, we wouldn't be testing it in a way that would be like write a unit tests, where we will just call this function with 2 and 3, and we'll test if it returns 5. But we will describe the property that for two integers, it would always have to return the sum of it. And there are libraries for that, where you can write tests like this, and they generate the inputs for you. The one for JavaScript is called fastcheck. So I will just tell it to take the last test. And by pressing Command K, we activate an inline chat, and I will tell it to rewrite this test using this fastcheck library. And it gives us like a really nice diff this way, where we can, by the way, we can choose if we want to accept it or do some follow-up edits. And we also have to import the library, of course, so we're going to select the whole text and just ask it to import the fastcheck library. Right. Now we're going to try running it again with this new property-based test. But as you might have expected, they take a lot of time to pass because it tries to test against all like random strings it can think of. And we actually exceeded the test, which, the way, this is like another really nice feature of Cursor, that here we have a button that says debug with AI. And if we press it, it actually goes into some sort of thinking mode to try debugging the issue we have at hand. You might not really see it because there's like low contrast here, but those are just thoughts it has about the issue at hand and how to fix it. And it takes it a while, but it realizes that there's the fastcheck library and that it might take a long time to actually pass tests because of that it's not an issue with the test itself. So it will eventually come to the conclusion that we should probably just extend the time limit for this test to pass. Now, there's one thing about this that the bad thing about this is that the chat and the inline edits don't really have like memory of each other, so it's like two different AIs, but it gives us the solution. So we just copy paste it there, or like edit the code using the solution it gave us. and we will try running it again. Right, and now it passed. Okay, so this is like some basic features of it, but as you might realize that this is something you can very easily achieve also with GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT. But one really interesting feature that's like a selling point for me, except for the fact that it's way more integrated into each other, is I'm gonna show you something called the interpreter mode. So I just like deleted the test file. And I need you to pay attention because we will do the exact same thing and it will look the same, but it will be completely different. And that's because we will switch from normal chat to interpreter mode, which is, by the way, a beta feature that you have to enable in settings. And we will ask it again to write the unit test for the password service. And the big difference now is that it's actually sort of autonomous in the sense that it has like a control over the whole code base, so it can also create files, edit files, and do all these things for us. It only asks for confirmation. So at this point, I'm actually not touching the code base at all. I'm just giving it confirmation to do what it says it's going to do. That means create a new file at the place where it's supposed to be, then go into it and start editing it, which it's doing now. And when I navigate there, I can see that it started writing the code right where it's supposed to be, instead of me having to copy-paste it into the code myself. And it even asked me if I want it to run the test for me. So I'm not gonna say anything here, but yeah. I will ask it to do the same thing like it did before with the fastcheck library, again, without actually touching the code. And it even tries to install the fastcheck library. And here it's actually, there's the interesting part that I showed you in the beginning where I was in the wrong directory, because it happens to it as well, since this is a monorepo with backend and frontend directories. But it realizes that. And it also realizes that the package is already installed. But it's able to like navigate to the correct directory itself. And it asks me if it should run the updated tests. So I say, yes, please. And it tries to run them in the correct directory. But this is unfortunately an issue with Cursor, that it runs it in some sort of Jupyter environment when they have old version of Node. So it's not able to run like tests in the latest JavaScript or latest Node version. Yeah, but right now it actually just realized that it's in the wrong directory. I was a bit ahead, sorry. Now it's realizing that it has like the old version of Node. It asks me to check the version. It sees that it's like an old version. It would like to update it, but that's something that doesn't really work here yet. I think that's like one of the reasons why this is just a beta feature and not like a final product. So here we're still kind of stuck with having to do it ourselves to run the tests, because my version is just different, but can't really do much about it in the interpreter mode. It's unfortunately one of the bad things about Cursor, but I hope they're gonna fix it soon. Yeah, oh, and it also has this thing where the similar thing with the auto-debug of issues in the terminal, you can also do it in code. Like it can analyze the code issues, linter issues, and everything like that to fix it for you. Like there was some wrong or like unneeded import. So we can just ask it to fix that. It just removes the unused import here. Yep. But we were back in the normal chat. Unfortunately, like this doesn't work with the interpreter mode yet. Okay. All right. Yeah, and we have like the exact same issue here, and we would just fix it using the interpreter mode again, but it's probably not that interesting anymore. So I want to show another feature that Cursor has. And that's something called new AI project, which means that if we go to an empty window in Cursor, we have this nice row here that just says new AI project. And if we click on it, it just asks us what we want to build. So I decided I want to build a snake game. And now it's going to be a bit sped up, so it's not going to reflect the real speed, unfortunately. But the nice thing is that whatever you write there actually thinks of the file structure for you and starts creating the whole project. So it creates all the necessary files, it goes wherever you need to go, but unfortunately it doesn't really like finish it for you. It always gets stuck at some point for some reason. I'm not sure if that's like on purpose that it lets you finish it, but I didn't like that, so I decided to like combine it with the interpreter mode and just said finish this snake game for me. And it actually like analyzed the code, what it already created, and found what's necessary to be done. Yep. Yeah, so here it says that now I should test it, that it should be finished. So I'm going to test it here. And we have like a snake game, which doesn't really work. It didn't eat anything. But I just went back and said that the eating of the squares doesn't work, so fix that. So it tries to fix it. Asked me to test it again. It still doesn't work. So I just said again, it still doesn't work. And now it realizes what the issue was, because it was kind of more complicated. And it goes through the code and tries to fix all of it. And now it actually managed to do that. So we have like a working game of Snake, which took only like 10 minutes to create in like real time because it was a bit slower, maybe even less than that. And the funny thing is that I didn't even touch the code. Like I didn't create any file, I didn't write a single line of code, which is nice. Okay, now I wanted to do some feature comparison between these three, like probably most popular AI solutions right now. And let's go one by one. Like there's auto-completion, which is kind of, you would say a given, but ChatGPT doesn't have that because that doesn't exactly work with your code. GitHub Copilot does it. That's like the main selling point of it, or the main original feature, that it gives you auto-completion of code where you just press tab for the suggestions. And Cursor IDE has that too, as of recently, where it works basically the same as GitHub Copilot, but it's a little bit different. It's tweaked by the Cursor IDE team to be a little bit more precise but slower than Copilot. And they themselves at least claim that they prefer to use it to Copilot at this point, like their own internal developers. It has integrated chat, that's like all of them. But Cursor is the only one that can work in this autonomous mode as far as I know. Like GitHub Copilot is aware of your code base, but it doesn't really do everything for you. It just still suggests things. Then there's inline AI editing, which Cursor has. That's the command K thing I showed you. ChatGPT doesn't, because that's like a separate thing, and GitHub Copilot sort of has it. I just didn't think it works as well as in Cursor. The Cursor and GitHub Copilot both have context-aware chat. That means that the chat is aware of the whole code base. So you can ask it things like generate README for me, and it should be theoretically able to do it, which ChatGPT can also do if you give it the code base, I guess, but it's not integrated within your IDE, so that's a bit more complicated. Now, Cursor, as far as I know, is the only one that has the option to create projects from scratch by just prompting and generating all of the file structure for you. And yeah, all of them are able to let you like include some additional documentation, like either in files or like external URLs to crawl through and like improve the answers and the suggestions. And now I think that ChatGPT is the only one that has image processing, because I know that there's this thing where you can just upload a hand-drawn diagram to it and it will create some sort of code for you. And I thought that would be like super cool if I had it in the not so live demo here, but it has like an option to upload image for you, but when I did it, it just completely ignored it. I don't know why. I mean Cursor. So I can't really give it the point here, but maybe they're gonna fix it and it will work like this, so I can just write some little diagram of what I want it to implement and it will do it for me. Now, unfortunately, it's not really free. It has 3 tiers. And the basic one you could use, but it's kind of shitty. It doesn't really do much. It just gives you 50 slow GPT-4 uses and 200 GPT 3.5 uses per month, which might not be enough. But what you could do is you can give them your own OpenAI key if you have OpenAI account, and then it's basically free. You only pay for OpenAI, but that disables the interpreter mode, which is kind of the main reason why I use it for me. Now the Pro tier costs the same as ChatGPT Plus, and it is much more useful. Like it has basically unlimited GPT-4 uses in the slow mode, and then there's business mode, which is everything in Pro, but some more like enhanced privacy and billing options for companies. Okay. So I have a little pricing comparison between them, where I tried to like loosely compare the different tiers, where GitHub Copilot comes out as the cheapest option in the individual, like some Pro tier. But I feel like it doesn't really give you what Cursor does, so I would actually at that point rather pay twice for Cursor than just use VS Code with Copilots together. And ChatGPT is, of course, something a little bit different, which is still useful. And I think it sometimes gives you actually better answers in the chat. So I personally, I use both ChatGPT and Cursor, but I don't really use Copilot anymore. Now, as for privacy, it is possible to enable privacy mode, which means that none of your data actually gets to the Cursor servers. They just send them straight to OpenAI, which has some data retention policy that it stores them for 30 days, I think. But if you have the business tier for $40 per month, you can enable 0 data retention policy, so OpenAI doesn't really store anything here. Now, just to sum it up, like those I think are the pros of Cursor, which is basically the same features that I listed in the beginning. By the way, the create projects from scratch, it's not supposed to be capital S, like I know that's a different language. I just forgot to fix that. Yeah. Now cons. Yes, the interpreter and Copilot plus, which is what they call their own Copilot, are just beta features, and you need to enable them in settings, and it also means that they don't always work as well. OpenAI key does not enable interpreter mode, as I said. That's definitely con for me. And the interpreter mode does not run latest Node. That's, like, of course, only relevant to Node.js developers, but I think with any other technology, you will have similar issues that the environment it runs in is not going to really perform as well as you. Like, it doesn't really have a control over your terminal. It doesn't have a very useful free tier, in my opinion. Doesn't seem to process images very well. And now, name I listed as a con because it's really hard to find docs or like any discussion for something that's just called Cursor. And also one con is that I feel like some features aren't very well documented. Like I feel like, for example, the interpreter mode, you can basically only find information about it in the changelog and not in the official docs, which seems kind of crazy to me. And to sum it up, like, just have to say that what I showed you in the demo, that was some very basic stuff. And if you're going to work with it on like larger code base, it will of course need a lot of oversight, and it won't really work for you even with the interpreter mode like the same way you would. Like I always thought it would be super nice if I could just, have something this autonomous that doesn't even ask me to, confirm any changes it's gonna make and just connect it to Jira and just let it work on new tasks that were assigned to me. But that's not gonna work yet. It can still be used in tandem with ChatGPT, of course, because sometimes you're just gonna get better responses from there. At least that was my experience with it. It definitely, in my opinion, removes the need for GitHub Copilot, and the best thing about it is that it's still just Visual Studio Code under the hood, so there's not really reason not to try it. You can, when you install it, it even asks you if you want to assign it to the same shortcut as VS Code, and all your settings or your extensions, everything will work exactly the same. Like there are a few minor changes in the UI, but it's nothing you wouldn't get used to. Okay, and that was it. So. Any questions?
Thank you very much for the lovely presentation.
Thank you.
So, I don't know about you, but what I learned from today so far is for the first presentation to have the expectations from the code defined before I write the code, and from the second presentation not to write the code, obviously. So,
Exactly.
thanks for that. I've been using Cursor for like past week. It's really good. The only mistake I did was when I was setting it up, I was skeptical, so I didn't install the code shortcut in terminal, so I have to do that eventually.
Yeah, me too, and I didn't find a way to actually do it retrospectively, so.
Yeah. And just to be absolutely transparent here, Peter is not a salesperson for Cursor. He's just person responsible in Applifting for educating people in our company how to use AI the best way possible. So that's why he did all the research. So thank you very much, Peter. Are there any questions? I don't have any questions in the Slido, so right back.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to ask about the whole project creation thing, because as far as I know, Copilot can actually do that.
Okay.
In a way that you give it like a special prompt and it will create a basic project. I don't know if Snake level, I haven't delved in that much into it, but it can kind of do that. And yeah, just maybe to reiterate on that point.
That's possible. Like I was trying to like check all the
because
features
like
of Copilot, but I wasn't able to find.
There are a lot of new features in Copilot.
Yeah, I know. Like
weekly, monthly, etc. So I think the gap might get smaller with time. Yeah, and about the data privacy thing, it's kind of weird that they want you to pay $40 to get data privacy.
Yeah, yeah.
Which then might end up on Microsoft anyway. But yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I wanted to actually. I was thinking to start the presentation with like I'm not sure how much of it is already outdated because I know that it's like start changing a lot.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like a lot of. Well, maybe my voice is loud enough.
I know.
But yeah, maybe I think it's just hard to keep up with these things. So
Yeah, exactly.
I just kind of wanted to fill that a bit. But
Yeah, that's a fair point. But like I want to say that like both Copilot and Cursor, they're actually like very. It seems like Cursor is trying to always catch up on Copilot and be like a little bit ahead, and Copilot seems to be like doing similar things. So it's actually interesting to. It's definitely worth it to like look for the progress with both of them.
Yeah.
Because like I was not like sitting on Copilot. I just felt that for me, all the like pros of Copilot seem to be like basically erased by the current version of Cursor, and it seems like that's their aim. Yeah.
What I wanted to say is that it's good to keep an eye on both, because
Yeah,
I think they might both have like different features that developers just not stick like to one religiously, but just keep an eye on both.
That's actually a good point. I also forgot to say that both have actually some Git integrations, but I feel like they're a little bit different. And with Copilot, that's something you only get in the Enterprise Edition, where Copilot can generate PRs for you, like the description for PRs. And
I think that already works for individuals, as far as I know.
I was just checking it, and I think it was really just Enterprise, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And Cursor, on the other hand, I'm not sure if they have that, but they definitely do have like AI reviews that you can ask it to do a review on your div. So it gives you its own AI review right in the IDE, so you can fix the bugs if it finds any.
Yeah, and one more thing, which is like an actual question.
Okay.
So can you use like local models, or is there any like way to like use a locally ran model on Codex or not Codex?
I
Cursor?
don't think so, but I wasn't really doing any research into that. But I think
Yeah,
like at least
that
the
might be
way
cool.
the way they advertise it, it's basically like an open AI connected like IDE. So I
Okay.
would be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Do you care about your data privacy?
Well, me not, but enterprises do.
I guess that's why it costs $40. Yeah. More questions? Anyone? Okay.
Hi, I am Vráťa, new kid in town. So my question is, if I were a founder and I had a team of developers starting new project, so what should be the policy? What of those tools should I pay for and let my developers to learn? Like, what would be your go-to if I'm kind of like I'm working for others, for example. I have teams for hire. So what would be your recommendation?
Okay. Like you mean like if I was starting a project, which tools of these would I recommend you to use?
Yeah. In terms of like getting people very quickly up to speed and actually getting the benefits out of it.
I mean, I would probably just reiterate my opinion that I would use Cursor first and foremost, but probably also ChatGPT for some other functionality, and to always have like the latest ChatGPT functionality, because that seems to make the most sense to me. Even though I know that means like at least $40 per month for ChatGPT Plus and for Cursor in the Pro version, but that seems very worth it for what those tools give you. But some people might actually like disagree. Some people might say that they don't even need ChatGPT. I don't know, but like I'm still kind of used to having it to ask for some additional help. And I also like that ChatGPT has the custom GPTs where you can tailor the GPT to your needs, which you can't really do in Cursor, which is actually kind of a shame, because you would want to have something like the chat you have to be maybe based on your custom GPT, which you can't really do. Yeah.
Okay, and if you kind of forget about the custom GPTs, couldn't you just like pass through the questions through the chat interface of Cursor? You can talk about flowers and trees and beautiful elephants with the Cursor SO chat, or it's not really possible?
I haven't tried talking to it about trees. So I don't know, actually.
I think it's a very worthwhile experiment.
But I know that some people do it, that you can go to like some online companies, like support chat, where they often run GPT, and you can actually ask it code questions, so you don't have to pay for GPT.
So live demo?
Yeah, but then my code that could be potentially a customer code will not only OpenAI will have it, but also DHL will have it, or
I know.
Yeah,
Like I'm not suggesting you do that for enterprise projects. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
Okay, any more questions? Anyone? Perfect.
You seem to be pretty much convinced. And about your team, what is the adoption there? Did you manage like maybe to turn someone around? And if yes, is there someone who maybe came back to VS Code because they didn't like it or for whatever reason?
I've actually myself started using it only basically a few weeks ago, and I haven't even I only did this presentation one internally, and no one from my team was there at that point. So it's possible no one used it. I know one person who I actually know about Cursor from him, that he actually sort of reverted to VS Code and uses ChatGPT and Copilot, but it was just some minor annoyance with the UI. I think there's some things like the auto-fixing. You actually have to do 2 clicks instead of 1 in Cursor, as opposed to VS Code. So that was maybe his reason to switch back, but for me that didn't seem like such a big deal breaker. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay.
More questions? Anyone?
A question, what's your experience with using either Cursor or Copilot chat on a real-world project or work project? Because on our team, like initially everyone is excited and wants to try it, and you find out it's sometimes not aware of everything that you have in your code base, and the answers are not perfect. And after few attempts, they give up. And how do you instead it? I personally use it for things I don't know. It's like, how do I use this library, or how do I do that? It's much faster than just search for documentation. But if it's a code base that I know, it's not often that helpful.
Yeah, I get that. And the important thing for me is that to realize that it's, of course, it's not like clairvoyant, it doesn't know everything. And it's basically just like having a kind of not like a super great developer on your team, but the good thing with that is that there's like a super fast feedback loop. So whenever something doesn't work, you can just say, hey, this didn't work, like fix that for me. And I got to the point where I just keep doing that until it actually fixes it for me, as you saw with the snake game. And it actually often works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have to go back to Stack Overflow and like actually realize what's the problem there, especially if you work on something unique. Like it doesn't really replace you. It can work instead of you, but it's definitely like a super useful tool to like delegate all the boring tasks to. Like it won't really write something very, how do you say, like something very clever for you, in my opinion. Like sometimes it does, sometimes it's a hit or miss, and you basically turn yourself into a prompt engineer instead of software engineer, that you're just trying to like come up with the prompt that will actually make it do what you want. But I was thinking about that in terms of like, it's not very different like having like a junior developer on your team and giving him tasks, except Copilot and ChatGPT are much faster, so you can just give them like review much faster, and they cost way less. Which I'm not trying to say that you should replace your junior developers with Copilot or ChatGPT, but that you should, in my opinion, it's really handy if you teach them how to use it properly, or like if you teach yourself how to use it properly and when to use it, when not to use it, to boost your productivity. Because we had actually one really interesting internal demo here, which was made like a year ago, where we just tried to solve some code issues. And we had rules that one of the developers was only allowed to use AI, and the other one was only allowed to use Stack Overflow and like Google, which the AI developer wasn't allowed to use. And it was very interesting that the effectivity of the developer who only used AI instead of Google was actually like 10 times faster. Like he was able to solve the same 5 issues like 10 times faster than the developer who was trying to use Google for that. And the developer who was trying to Google wasn't even like trying to write the code themselves. He was literally just like searching Stack Overflow for like for the solution, because it was some kind of basic code. But the point is that it really made it so much faster. And I think like often developers are just, they're kind of annoyed by the wrong answers they get from AI, that they don't even realize how much faster it makes them than if they were like trying to find those answers themselves, or like solve the issues themselves. Yeah, does that answer your question?
It sounds like you have to be just more patient. That's the answer, right?
I guess so. No, I wouldn't say so. I would just say that I'm lazier. Yeah.
Thanks. I think we have time for one more question. Is there anyone who has one? No, perfect. We can have longer pause. So, thank you, Peter, for the nice presentation.
Thank you too. Okay.
The question I get asked quite a lot is, will AI replace us? And I often say no, but it will replace those of us who don't use AI. So you don't have to use Cursor, but I definitely recommend using some kind of AI. So let's have a 5 or 10 minute break, and then I'll call you back here, and because we'll have the third and last presentation for the evening by Lukáš. So, it's time for the last presentation of the evening. So, if you would be so kind to sit down, calm down a bit. And the next speaker here is Lukáš. Lukáš is the third speaker and also the third tech lead who's speaking tonight. And Lukáš is a tech lead in our front-end team. And how many of you used Webpack before? We had quite a lot of users of VS Code, quite a lot of Webpack users as well. And there has been an alternative to that for a while, and maybe it's good enough to be used now? Lukáš, the stage is yours.
Hello, hello. 1, 2, 1, 2. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, I think we're fine. Okay, yeah, hello everybody. I just need the... Sorry, I should have realized this earlier. Do we have the clicker? So in the meantime, I saw a number of you have used Webpack before. How many of you are currently using Vite or have heard of Vite? Oh, okay, I don't think you need me in that case. Yeah, everybody uses it already. But yeah, let's talk about it. So first of all, Vite. What is it? Why you should care? Yep, just a second. Sorry. Should have done that bit earlier. Yeah, so Vite, if you are a web developer or you are programming in JavaScript, you are probably familiar with the State of the JavaScript survey, which comes out every year. And it basically asks all JavaScript developers a bunch of questions about their preferred technology, what they have tried, what they liked, what they did not like. And the results, oh, sorry, I'm just going to do it the old way. Okay, and the results for the past year, because this year's results have not come out, are something like this. So most adopted feature, top level weight, great, that's nice. What about most adopted technology? Wow, it's Vite, surprisingly. Okay, what about technology with highest retention? Okay, it's also Vite. What about the technology with highest interest? Yeah, it's also Vite. So apparently, there's quite a lot of buzz about Vite, and I think we should talk about it today. So initially, this was a talk I created a year ago in 2023, and I went back and I updated it and I polished it because previously it was for our internal front-end meetup, but now it's public. So let's get to it. Okay, what awaits us? A bunch of topics and some new that we've added, or I rather added this year. So let's get to it. First of all, let's get this out of the way. How do you pronounce Vite or Vite? Which is right? It's Vite. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't really feel like it, but that's what it says in the official docs. Moving on. Vite. So we all know that Webpack is a bundler, right? And so it stands to reason that if we should replace it, it's probably also a bundler. But it's not really. It's a build tool, and it's actually two tools which are kind of duct taped together. And the first of which is a development server, which serves ESM on demand and pre-bundles dependencies with ESBuild. And the other thing is a build command, which uses rollup under the hood to build production-ready bundle and has rich Webpack-like plugin APIs and config. So if that didn't make any sense, don't worry. We're going to cut through it. We're going to go way back and see what's all this about. OK, let's go really back. Right? So back to the days where we developed web pages using tables for layouts, that kind of history. So back then, we've used JavaScript mostly for sprinkling bits of interactivity across web pages. So it was mostly HTML, CSS, and a few maybe event handlers or scripts to add some extra juice. So over time, and recently, JavaScript, web pages are mostly JavaScript, so things have changed quite a lot. But up until recently, we needed to organize our code somehow because there was just too much to put in a single file, and then you had all this duplication. You wanted to have some sort of module system so you could reuse your code. So yeah, let's split it into modules, right? So back then, you would have 2 modules, like so. That's how you write modules, I guess. And then you have your main script, which imports those modules and makes use of them. And when you do that, or rather when you did that, so when you reference the script in your index.html, when you did that, it did not work. So yeah, it was not a great time. So what we did instead was we kind of thought of a solution. And that solution was that we could not use modules in browsers, but we used them anyway, but for development. And then when it came time to ship the code, we kind of just merged it together into a usually one really huge file, which is not really what you should be doing, but yeah. And then you serve that file to a user, and it worked. And we've called that process bundling. And that's where Webpack, Parcel, and Rollup and other bundlers came into the story. So that's what we used to do a lot, and we still do that, actually. So what has changed? Well, we've figured out that bundling has some serious limitations because our apps are getting more and more complex. We need to produce more and more JavaScript code to do all the cool interactive stuff we want to. And the tooling that we use is also mostly written in JavaScript, which is a bit weird. Don't try to think about it too much. But the issue is that JavaScript is not really a performant language. It's pretty slow. It's interpreted. It cannot really stand to compile to native languages like, I don't know, C++ or C. Well, nothing can stand to C, but anyway. So over time, we made some improvements. For example, we've started using SWC, Speedy Web Compiler, which is Rust-based transpiler, and you can see it and you can use it as part of Webpack 5. But still, the tooling was mostly JavaScript, so we were a bit stuck there. And just to prove my point, this is the Webpack repository, which, again, GitHub shows the most common language, so that's JavaScript. And it started to cause some problems, let's say. So we have this benchmark right over here, courtesy of the TurboPack team. And it basically says this one is for developer server start, right? So when you want to start developing locally, how long does it take to spin up that dev server? So for 1,000 of React components, and that doesn't mean just your components, but all components, including third-party code, it takes 3.6 seconds, apparently, which is not a lot. But for 5,000, it takes 12 seconds. That's not terrible. It's just like one-time cost, right? But the real killer is code updates. So when you have relatively few components, it takes a few hundred milliseconds for Webpack to update. But as you start growing those components, and as your apps get more complex in size, Webpack takes much, much more longer to update. And that's really the main issue. So the JavaScript ecosystem has evolved a lot in the past few years. And notably, there have been 2 specific improvements. The first is that we finally got module support in browsers using ECMAScript modules. And secondly, we've got a new generation of build tools which are written and compiled to native languages. So that's like Rust and Go and so on. So the example I showed you before, right? Same 2 modules, same main script, and the same HTML even, but with one difference, and that is if I add the type attribute module, it starts using ECMAScript for that particular JavaScript script. And let's see what happens. So first, when you go to the page, you download the HTML file. That HTML file references the main script. That main script pulls the 2 modules, and they all get evaluated. So it actually works now, and you can do this. So that's pretty cool. And the other advancement I was talking about is that, yeah, we have new tools and new languages. They are very optimized. And one of those, as an example, is ESBuild, which is a transpiler written in Go. And it's fast. It's like anywhere near 10 to 100 times faster than our current tools. So if you're like me, you absolutely don't believe that. And you want to see some benchmarks. So here's a benchmark, a medium-sized project written in TypeScript. How long does it take to transpile or build the project, right? So yeah, there are some differences, right? ESBuild takes like 0.1 second, and Webpack 5 takes like 16 seconds. So it's actually faster than 100 times. But yeah, it just goes to show that these tools are really, really useful. Okay, so let's go back to Vite. So if you remember, Vite is a development server plus build command. The development server, right, uses ESBuild, the tool I just shown you. It's kind of a process that has two parts. In the first part, Vite pre-bundles dependencies. And in this context, dependencies are JavaScript code that does not change very often. So that's like your NPM dependencies, third-party code. And there's two reasons to do that. First is to unify different module systems. There's before ECMAScript modules came around and it became standardized, there was like CommonJS, there was UMD, AMD, and whatever. So it kind of converts that into all into ESM. And the other reason is performance optimization. So if you remember, I've shown you the network tab. For each module that you use with ECMAScript modules, it makes one network request. And some libraries are really modularized, like Lodash, which has like 600 modules in total. If you imported like all of Lodash in your app and used ECMAScript modules, you would make 600 network requests. So obviously you can't do that. It just doesn't work really well. So we goes through your dependencies and pre-bundles them so that doesn't happen. So that's nice. You can check these dependencies in your node modules.vite/deps folder. So you can see that from one of our projects, we got some Radix stuff, some Lingui stuff, and some Sentry, just to give an example. Okay, so anything that's not third-party code is considered source code, which is non-plain JavaScript, or rather TypeScript nowadays, that needs transforming, and it changes very often. So this code, basically your own code, gets served as ES modules on demand. It just gets transpiled. It doesn't actually bundle the stuff before it serves it to you. And it just straight up sends you all of your modules. So it's fast, and it looks like this. And again, this is an example from one of our projects. And again, we can see that we first pull the main file, which is literally called main.tsx. Then we pull all of its dependencies, then all of their dependencies. And basically you pull whatever number of modules you need to render your page. So before, just to contrast, before you would have a one bundle that you would get served, and you would have to wait for that to kind of be built by Webpack or other tools before you could serve that. So this is faster. Okay, so it's faster. How much faster is it? Let's see some benchmarks, right? So again, these are from TurboPack, and we have a few tools. We have Next 13 with TurboPack. Let's ignore that. We'll talk about that later. We have Next 12, which uses the SWC, the Speedy Web Compiler I was talking about before. By the way, Next uses Webpack under the hood. So that's like Webpack 5 with SWC. And then we've got Next 11, which uses Babel, which is kind of like what we've used before SWC. So Webpack plus Babel, definitely slowest. Then we got Next.js 12 with Webpack still, but it uses Speedy Web Compiler, which speeds it up a lot. Then we got Vite, which is even faster, and notably in file updates, which is like the most important metric, perhaps. And then we got Next 13 with TurboPack. We will talk about TurboPack later. There's a lot to say about that. Okay, how does it scale? Well, turns out it scales really well, because when you check out the lines for Next.js 11 and 12, which are both using Webpack, they really fall off when you start working with a large number of modules, when your app grows in size. Whereas when you look at Vite or Webpack, these guys stay pretty much consistent and linear, let's say. So yeah, it's much better. It's an improvement. Great. So that was development server, right? That was what you're working on when you're developing your app locally. What about production builds or just builds? Well, Vite has a inbuilt build command, which uses rollup under the hood. Now, rollup is a bundler. It's very similar to Webpack. It's like the same generation of tools. And it's also written in JavaScript, which, wait. Oh, no. Oh, dear. OK, so about the bundling performance, it's not better. It's not better than Webpack. And yeah, it might be slightly worse in some cases, but mostly it's the same. They're like about the same. OK. So where did our great performance go for production builds? Why are we not seeing the same results? So your question might be, OK, we saw performance gain when we started using ESBuild. Why are we not using ESBuild for production builds? To which my answer is, have you actually tried using ESBuild? It's a nightmare. It doesn't have a config file. It only has CLI or an API, a very basic API. It's still in version 0.11.10, which is described as late-stage beta by the author. 1 year later, we are on version 0.19.11, and not much else has changed. It has only recently got a plugin API, so the plugin ecosystem is really, really small. And there's only like one primary developer. Of course, there's multiple contributors, but only one one guy in the lead. OK. So what the Vite team did was they decided to go with rollup. Why? Because it's flexible. It has an API. It has existing API and infrastructure, so it's useful on majority of your projects. If you've used ESBuild, you could use it. You could use Vite maybe for like 10, 20% of projects, and everything else would be just like you can't do it. You don't have the plugins. It can't handle certain file types, certain libraries. So that's the decision they made. And they did that. They basically did a performance flexibility trade-off. So it's not as performant, but it's much more useful. And this is like the magic spell that helped Vite gain popularity, because not only is it useful, it's in a lot of cases can directly replace Webpack. Note that we might be open to using ESBuild in the future for production builds, but we'll come back to that later. OK, so I've talked a lot about how does Vite work. So what it actually does for you, this is the sales pitch, right? So it's really fast for local development server, but what else does it do? It's opinionated, which means that it has a lot of zero config support out of the box. So like TypeScript, JSX, CSS modules, various preprocessors like SAS, static asset importing, JSON importing, all the good stuff that you could possibly want. Let me explain this way, right? So have you ever configured Webpack on your own? I suppose some of you have, and it usually ends up looking something like this, because you wanted to handle TypeScript, CSS, whatever. It's not fun. It's not a good time. So what does it look like in Vite? Well, the Vite config looks like this for the same feature set, basically. You can see why it's popular. All right. So what else does Vite do? Well, there's a bunch of little things, right? Like it has first-class support for TypeScript, even for config files. So you get type checking, you get IntelliSense. What else? It has very pretty errors and debugging, which is really useful. And it also auto-detects environment variables changes or the changes of the config and just kind of reboots or restarts itself. So very nice, very nice developer experience. Now, this one is really important, and that is having a single config. So you can have a single Vite configuration for your app, Storybook, if you're using it, and your testing setup. And we personally in Applifting take advantage of this on multiple projects, and it's a real time saver. OK, speaking of tests, let's talk about Vitest. Actually, let's talk about Jest. I like Jest, but there's this one little thing that irks me. Well, you need to configure it all over again, right? So you've configured Webpack on your own, and now you need to do Jest as well, because it doesn't understand CSS, it doesn't understand asset imports, it doesn't know what images are. So you need to tell it to basically ignore the images, transform the TypeScript, and it ends up looking like this. If you're lucky, if you're using Next.js, it ends up looking like this. So yeah, not a great time, not great developer experience. So what's Vite-test? So Vite-test is a Vite native unit test framework. It has the same feature support as Vite. It can use existing Vite config. That's the most important thing. You don't need to do a separate config for your tests. Most of all, again, in a very wise decision, the Vite team has decided to have the API be compatible with Jest, which means it looks and feels like almost the same, so it has almost no learning curve, and it works with React testing library, which is like really important to me personally. Here's an example, a sample test from one of our projects, right? So we got our typical describe before each, it blocks. We got some mocking, which works as you would expect. We got the rendering of the component, which we use our own custom wrapper. Then you have the assertions. So in this case, we are using React testing library for this test and this test. And yeah, that's it. If it feels and looks like the same, it's because it is. So really easy to switch from Jest to Vite-test. And even the way it works, even the way it kind of displays the results is very familiar. So yeah, really great replacement. Okay, so to sum it up, at least for this section, is Vite actually better than Webpack? Can you replace all of your Webpack projects with all of your Webpack on all of your projects with Vite? And the answer is, it depends. Yeah, sorry, no easy answers in my talks. So let's sum it up a little bit. So Vite has really fast development because it has a really fast dev server startup and code updates. It's because it has a different approach than Webpack, and that's a killer feature of Vite. That's why we like it as developers. For production builds, however, it's mostly the same performance as Webpack, but it's also mostly the same flexibility. So really, there's not much difference if you are looking for production build performance. So in conclusion, I think Vite is better than Webpack for most projects because it allows for faster development and build options remain flexible. So you are not stuck. You are actually able to migrate your project from Webpack to Vite. But however, some projects might have very specific requirements, and you might not be able to use Vite on them. So really depends on your use case. So about Vite, my recommendation, yes, use it wherever it makes sense. For example, most of our web projects are basic web apps or component libraries. We are not brutal. We are not like developing bleeding edge tech, right? So we use this tool because it makes sense for us. However, be careful that Vite cannot be used with Next.js because Next.js has decided to use TurboPack in the future, and right now it uses Webpack. And yeah, about Vite-test, should you use it? My recommendation is yes, whenever you are using Vite. Vite-test is technically still in beta, but personally I have not encountered any issues, and I think it's pretty much ready for production, really. So maybe to sum up this comparison, here is a post by Evan Yu, who is the founder or co-creator of Vue, but also of Vite, because it's the same guy. So he says that it's not Vite's goal to completely replace Webpack, and that there are some projects, very specific projects, that you might want to keep using Webpack for, because it's really mature and has rich ecosystem. But for everyone else, which could be like 90% of projects, yeah, go ahead, use Vite. Okay, to top this off, let's go through two quick sections. The first one is what's new with Vite in 2024. Okay, so Vite had 2 releases, 4.3, which is even faster. Okay, they just punched the code and made it even faster. And Vite 5, which was interesting because now it uses Rollup 4, which uses SWC, which means it has better performance for production builds. It should be still roughly comparable to Webpack, so don't get too excited. But yeah, and it has a performance optimization guide for certain use cases. By the way, when it comes to framework adoption, Angular 16 and newer uses Vite as its default dev server. And if you're a fan of Remix, Remix has started supporting Vite as well. Although the initial support is a bit unstable, but they are working on it. So what are the future plans of Vite? They actually decided to create a Rust port of Rollup. They're going to call it Rolldown, which is a terrible name. And the advantage is they're going to have the native Rust performance, and they're going to have the Rollup flexibility. So then they're going to have one tool for both development server and production bots. So yeah, the future is bright, except it's very early work in progress. And they should be open sourcing Rolldown in this quarter. So we'll see how that goes. OK, now this section. I created this section because someone would ask me about TurboPack, so I'm going to prevent that. So what's TurboPack? Well, if you haven't heard about all the hype around this technology already, TurboPack is a new Rust-based bundler. It's made by the same people who made other popular tools like Next.js, Vercel, and TurboRepo, and it's really fast, supposedly. So remember those benchmarks from earlier. The Next.js with TurboPack is even faster than Vite. Not by much, mind you, but there's a significant difference. So how do you actually use it? Well, if you are using Next.js 14, you can opt into using TurboPack. It's going to use it for its development server, so not for production builds. And it's still considered beta for this purpose. And it's going to be considered stable for this purpose when it passes 100% of next dev tests. What does that mean? Well, you can actually track the progress on rvturbo.yet.com, where they have like their 5,900 dev tests, which the tool has to pass in order to be considered stable. And yeah, the guys are getting there, but it might take a few weeks or months before it's ready. And that's like my real criticism. TurboPack is not ready yet, right? You cannot use it outside of Next.js. It has a very, very limited configuration. It has no plugins or plugin API yet because it's still very experimental. And it will take quite some time to add these features. Like remember ESBuild? It's like similar to that. But of course, Next has like more people working on the project, so it might not take that long. But still, it's not ready. And this one is really weird, but do you remember that TurboPack marketing hype, like when it was announced and then everyone and their mom wanted to start using TurboPack? And I was like, okay, so it's like 1.5 years later, how many people have actually tried it on a real-world projects? I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find any real-world reviews or experiences, like even from mid-sized projects. Like I expected somebody to be an early adopter and start using it. But I couldn't find any reviews, so really I have no idea how good it is really for a real-world project. So yeah, the takeaway from this section is TurboPack has been very hyped, but it's not ready. So for now, I do recommend using Vite if you can. It's like don't skip Vite because of TurboPack, because TurboPack might take another 2 years, say, to be like widely usable. Unfortunately, if you're using Next.js, you're stuck with Webpack, and I apologize for that. But hey, you can use Vitest with Next.js for some reason. I found that out like a week ago. So that's nice. And yeah, that's it for me. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask.
So now you know what kind of bundler, build tool you can request your AI to use. No, really, sorry. It was a wonderful presentation. I think that some people who don't use Vite might use it eventually because of this presentation. And maybe some of you who already do use Vite now can know more about it. So thank you very much. And are there any questions? I didn't find anything on the Slido, but perhaps someone in the room? Anyone?
Thanks. Have you migrated any larger existing code base from CommonJS, say, to ECMAScript modules in order to use Vite? And what were like the major pitfalls, or how much did it take, for example, for a given size of the project?
We kind of did. There was one project we were refactoring for a client. It was like a legacy PHP application, pretty big. It wasn't even using Webpack. It was using Gulp with Browserify. So like that's like one generation even before that. And we wanted to migrate it to Vite to speed up like builds and everything. So it took some time. We had to convert some modules, some old legacy scripts to ESM, which is not really that hard to do. You just have to mostly use the type module attribute. And if some of those scripts use global variables, which some of them unfortunately did, you kind of need to expose them in a different way. But that was mostly all of the effort. And it sped up build times from 5 minutes to like 45 seconds. So that's not like, that doesn't mean that Vite is like a great miracle. It's just like better than like two generations before.
Thanks.
Thanks. So more questions? Anyone? Doesn't seem like it. In that case, thank you very much, Lukáš, for the presentation. And as this was the last presentation of the evening, all I can do is to invite you to chat with your fellow visitors and see you next time. And also, there's one more thing. There are some QR codes posted, I think, right there and perhaps right there at the back and next to Vráťa as well. And there's a quiz, and if you fill it in, I think there's some merch prepared for you in the other room. So go ahead, enjoy your evening, and see you next time at the next crew talk, which will be in a month, give or take. Thanks.